Welcome to the human narratives, 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 narratives. Welcome to the human narratives, you beautiful people of the world. Welcome to another beautiful week. Happy Father's Day to all of the fathers out there. Happy Father's Day to my biological father here on earth, but also happy Father's Day to my God, my God, who is my father, who is my mother, who ensure that I am equipped with everything that I need to be able to sustain whatever I need to sustain on this earth. So I just want to say glory and thanks to my God, who is always consistent. And of course, happy Father's Day to my father as well. Tamba, I love you. All right, so welcome to the Human Narratives. I hope you guys had a wonderful week. I had a wonderful week this week. Just came from a beautiful work after church, a 2 hour walk, and it was beautiful. Got to just, feel the beautiful nature of God creation, the butterflies, the birds as they flew in the air and they are enjoying the beautiful wind. I mean, it is so beautiful in the way the good Lord created this world and in how he allows us to enjoy it, right? So I hope that you are able to see the beauty in the things that you experience in this world every day. So welcome. So let's dive into today's topic. I wanted to talk about an imbalance of power in relationships. Balance of power that often happens where one person consistently holds more influence, where someone holds control and tends to make more decision or is the authority figure in over decision than the other. And by the way, I got my little margarita drink that I fixed myself, so cheers to you all out there. mm. Ooh, that's good. I said I'm gonna perfect my drink, but I'm getting there. But anyway, so this dynamic can often, like I said, exist in relationships. This dynamic can exist in, friendships. It can exist in family dynamics. It can also, exist in the workplace. When I saw that in the workplace, I was like, whoa, in the workplace? Okay, now, because the workplace, a lot of boundaries there, but I can see how that tends to happen, right? And it can be very emotional. Sometimes it can be financially, it can be physical and psychologically impactful, right? So, what are the signs of power imbalance? Ooh, things that we all need to be aware of, things that we all need to look for in our relationships. Because I do believe that relationships, it is about partnership, it is about consistency, it is about love, it is about mutual respect, and it is also about the individuals wanting to be in that space, right, and working to ensure that they keep and maintain and protect that space. And when one partner is not willing to do the work, baby girl, baby boy, you will know. So some of the signs of power imbalance can include where one partner makes all the decisions, from finances to social plans to one person's being dominant over those type of decision makings, in the relationship. It can also be a lack of mutual respect. I think that's the big one for me. Respect. I'm a big part on that. One person needs feelings or opinions are regularly dismissed. They're not heard. They feel neglected. They feel ignored. There's this also, fear and anxiety that tends to rises at times, right? Less powerful partner may feel afraid to speak up or set boundaries. Oh Lord, I thank God that He's always giving me the voice to be able to speak, no matter how hard it is, and no matter how much it is that I assume that I may lose in that situation. Because guess what? This voice matters, and this voice will be heard. So, there's this less powerful partner where they feel, afraid to share their voice, to even speak about what their truth is as a result of power imbalance. There's this also control over resources, right? One partner may restrict access to money, time, friendships, or friends groups, or even mobility in so many ways. And also this emotional or unequal emotional labor, right? Where person put in all the work when it comes to listening, where one person put in all the work when it comes to caring and taking care of the responsibilities in the day-to-day existence of that relationship or that relationship dynamic. And it may be a lot of compromising in one partner's side versus actually it being balanced, where both individuals can hold the weight of that relationship. So, of course, there are always consequences, right? When we're not doing what we're supposed to do and showing up in the manner capacity that we're supposed to be showing up in these spaces, there are consequences, whether it's positive or negative. But if I'm talking about imbalance, we already know it's negative consequences, right? So, what are some of those negative consequences when it comes to power imbalance? Oh, your girl look good too. Oh yeah. Look at this. I just got more piercing. I'm loving my piercing. So if you guys are into all of that, holla at your girl. I'm telling you, this I thought it was gonna be painful, but it's not. So I said I'm gonna become a piercing addict pretty soon. But anyway, what are the consequences of imbalance of power in relationship? A lot of times you will see where resentment may develop, right? This building the power in the person with less power, where they're resentful of the person who tends to be the authority figure in the relationship, right? There's also a lot of low self-esteem. The person who may feel less than or rejected or dismissed in the relationship may often feel like they may doubt their perspective, their opinions. They may question themselves. They may question their worth. They may question their autonomy in the relationship. I've seen this many times in therapeutic relationship as a therapist when I provide, couples therapy, where, I see individuals who often question themselves about what they have said, and they don't stand by it because for so many years this emotional abuse and neglect have been imposed upon them, where they start doubting their own truths and their own authenticity, right? Because someone have told them that how they're showing up is not enough, or how they're showing up, there is something wrong with that space. And so these individuals tend to develop these low self-esteem as a result of that. So that's called, that's huge. And they start seeing themselves differently and believing everything what this other person is telling them is the truth, and they lose sight of what truth is in their own life, their own individualism, right? There's also this concern for codependency. The relationship becomes unhealthy or even abusive, right? And abuse does not have to be physical. You don't have to see it to know that it's occurring. Emotional abuse comes in different form. Neglect comes in different form. And a lot of times, as a provider, as a human being, as person, we tend to look for the physical signs of things, but there's always that internal part that we have to remember to search for and pay attention to. But not only allowing other people to search for it and look for it, but you also have to be able to do the work to search to see where you've lost your authenticity, where you've lost yourself in these relationships, so that you can start working and finding yourself again and self-discovering, that authentic part of who you are, because it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. Cheers, y'all. It's so beautiful, right? So, what healthy power dynamic looks like? There's mutual decision making. There's shared responsibilities. right? One person is not saying that, well, I can't do this because you've always done it. Now that I need your support, you should still continue to do it. But there's shared responsibilities. There's respect for boundaries. The other person is not questioning how many boundaries you have in place, but is looking forward to understanding what those boundaries are so that they can work in the areas maybe that is neglecting to show up in that space that is healthy, and vice versa, because it's a mutual work, mutual respect, and mutual understanding. There's open communication. There's open communication, baby. There's no running away from tough communication. I was listening to this mentor that gives a lot of motivational speech. I can't even think about his name. And he shared the other day that one of the video that I ran into, he shared that if someone that you're with tends to run away from tough conversations, that's not love. Because when someone loves you, they are willing to face those tough conversations, and they're willing to put in the work so that we can work towards those issues and figure out solutions and figure out what the problem is, so we can find a common ground, so we both can be happy and smile and pass through it, not run away from those tough conversations, or not ignore, dismiss it because it's irrelevant to one person when it's relevant to another partner. Because if it's relevant to one, it should be relevant to both. That's what partnership is all about. There's also flexibility in roles. It's not just about you are the man and you're the woman and you do this and you do that. There's shared responsibility, but there's also flexibility in role. Hey, my baby, do you want to cook tonight? Because guess what? I just want to put my feet up and watch some TV because I've had a long week. And guess what he'll say? Of course, baby, I got you. Because that's what we are supposed to do together, is make it happen so that there's success in this space, right? So how to address it? So I'm all over the place with this little topic. So follow me, guys. So how to address imbalance in relationship? Self-reflection. I love this piece. I love this piece because a lot of times we tend to look externally about what other people are not giving us, right? But also, what are you not giving yourself in that space? What are you depending on other people to give you when you can depend on yourself to provide it for yourself? So that's what self-reflection does. It's that self-awareness space where both partner are able to examine their roles and their contribution and how they show up in those different spaces, and how maybe they can show up differently maybe if it's not working. I tell couple this all the time. When you first met your partner, their needs and their wants might have been something you were able to address, or whatever the case is. But it's really important to do that self evaluation, and that evaluation to get it every year to see, hey, honey, how has your needs and your wants changed? And how can I show up for you if those needs and wants are no longer the same? Because we're humans. We're growing, we're evolving, we're changing, and there's beautiful things that comes with those different changes, and it shouldn't be prevented and ignored and looked as if it's something that is negative. But someone who truly loves you or loves you will understand how to meet you in that space of growth, and also do the work to be able to show up in that space for one another, right? So there's this self-reflection piece that brings self-awareness, because I don't believe in changing just others and not just changing yourself. You have to be able to also do that internal work because it's significant. All right, so there's open dialogue. How do we, address, imbalance of power in relationships? There's open dialogue. There, we address if there's imbalance with it, dishonest, without blaming, without, judgment, or without shame, and with the ability to also take accountability. Ooh, that's huge. Because there's a lot of times in relationships. Ooh, look at me messing up my camera. There's a lot of times. Oh, that's my little workout machine. There's a lot of times in relationships where One is willing for the other person to change, but the other is not willing to take accountability to change themselves, right? And it causes this friction in the relationship where it's difficult for change to even happen. Whew. That's hard. That's hard. That's hard. That's hard. So that's why it's really important when you're finding someone into your life. Make sure this is someone that is able to take accountability, is able to see their wrongs in what they're doing, not just them identifying your wrongs, but you are also able to identify, but that person is willing to identify their own. How are they showing up in that space for you, my love? How are they showing up in that space for you? Because it's not a one-way street, right? Okay, so there is open dialogue, there's set of boundaries. I am huge with boundaries. People who know me in my life or people who know me know that I'm a big boundary individual. I respect myself. So therefore, it does matter how people shows up in my space. Of course, right? And I respect other people. And I believe that individuals should value themselves. And how you show up matters. It matters, darling. So there are a set of boundaries that define what is acceptable and what is fair and what is right. And it's really important as individuals to be able to stick to those boundaries and make sure and ensure that it's consistent, because there are individuals who will sometimes push on your boundary to see if it's consistent and to see if you're going to be, sticking to what you said you would. So there's this sick of outside support. There's, sometimes individuals even go to therapy. Come see me. There's this individual who goes to therapy trying to work in that space because they want to do the work. They want to do the work. I have, as I'm growing and developing each day, I understand that relationship takes work. It's not about just the loving part. It's not just about the gifting and all of those things. But hard times come. There are times where your partner or the other individual is not in a good space. How do you show up for those individuals and not run away when it's hard, and only showing up when things are good? Because sometimes that happens too. And baby, if you're showing up when things are good, I don't want you around. Because I want you when it's dirty and when it's clean. Can you stick around, baby? So power and balance in relationship. I wanted to talk a little bit about that, right? So power and balance in relationship can be very different over time. It can erode trust. It can be emotion. It can cause concerns for emotional safety and intimacy. And a healthy relationship requires equal balance, even if the roles and responsibilities differ, right? um, so let's talk about those things a little bit. What is power imbalance in relationships, in romantic relationships particularly? so So this means that the partner consistently has more influence, like I mentioned earlier, control or authority in the relationship than the other, whether it's emotional, whether it's financial, whether it's sexual, or whether it's even in decision making. It can happen in the bedroom too, where a lot of times you may not want certain things to be done to your body, and the person who have more authority may convince you or may put a lot of pressure on you to make you feel like that is something that you should accept, when it's maybe against your value and your moral. Now, if something that you do enjoy, you want to do, baby, go for it and have some fun, right? But make sure that it is also part of what you want, and not just someone pressuring you because of the influence that they have over you. So common signs of power imbalance in relationship is where one person always make decision making, like as I stated earlier, what to eat, where to live, how to spend money, when to have sex, when to have sex. Ooh, Lord, okay, you got control there too. I don't know about that. But there's emotional manipulation or guilt and guilt tripping, where they're using love, or fear of losing that love, or guilt to kind of control the other person's behavior. There's this disregard for the needs and boundaries of the other person, where it's being ignored or dismissed. One partner desires kind of override the other's comfort or even consent in that space. There's financial control, there's unequal emotional labor. I mean, partner provides more support while the other is receiving a little in return, right? So there's this fear of also conflict or even punishment. One person may be walking on eggshells and afraid to disagree or assert themselves because their fear of maybe losing access to what they assume that they need, even though this space is unhealthy. Whew, that's heavy. That's heavy. So causes of power imbalance can vary in so many different ways. There can be personality differences where there's this dominant personality versus this passive personality. One is willing to be submissive and over the dominant, well, the dominance is willing to be dominant over the passive person, where they're submissive to everything this individual is wanting or this partner is wanting. This upbringing of trauma, a lot of times modeling parents or past abuse to kind of keep that person in space, in the controlling space that they want that individual to be in. There's this also cultural and gender norms, expectations of how you should show up in relationship. I'm a woman of different culture. That's how I like to describe myself. I'm a woman of different culture, and I love it. I love being able to, to the fact that I came from, Africa. I've lived in the Gambia. I've lived in America, and I love, to travel the world. One of my prayers, is the good Lord to allow me to see this world, this earth that He's allowed me in before He calls me home one day, right? So, a lot of things that I've learned in my experiences when it comes to culture and gender norms is where, in a lot of, arranged marriages, or, marriages that are controlled by religious belief and all of those type of things, where, a lot of times those partners are not showing up as their authentic self because of, tradition, because of cultural norms that have been set from generations to go, that people that are still in that family bloodline subjected to, even though they want to have their own voice, even though they want to be able to choose their own love and marry their own love, and they're not able to do that. That is challenging, right? So there's also this dependency, this financial, emotional, or even immigration. I just talked about that, right? Immigration and legal. There are circumstances where people who need type of status in certain countries. In the United States, for example, what we're going through right now with the immigration situation in California, the riots, the peaceful walk that we just had in Houston. All of those things can impact, can lead to power imbalance, where individuals married to obtain their documents or their paperwork, and they're being treated and neglected and being abused, but they feel like they don't have the voice to move forward because they need that status to be able to stay in the country, to be able to work and survive and take care of themselves, knowing that they came from a very disadvantaged environment. So there's all these different causes of power imbalance that can impact how an individual shows up in a relationship. So how to rebalance power in a relationship? Open communication, as I mentioned, being able to share your feelings without feeling like you're in a shameful environment, without feeling like you're being blamed, without feeling like you are a bother, you're bothering that person in that space. You can always use an I statement when you're sharing your emotion. This is how I feel, because a lot of times we also don't want to come defensive when we're showing up and wanting that support. Establishing boundaries is huge. I always say that people will treat you how you treat yourself. And if you want to be valued and worthy, you need to treat yourself as such. Because when you learn to treat yourself with respect and not willing to compromise, whew, not willing to compromise in those unhealthy places anymore, you will learn to also be able to stick with those boundaries that you're established. So being able to agree to what is acceptable and being able to stick to it no matter what, no matter how challenging it is, because sometimes there are going to be temptations, there are going to be distractions, and there are going to be things that try to break your boundary down because a lot of times you weren't consistent with it and people weren't used to it, and there's this form of manipulation and gaslighting that try to break that. But you have to be consistent because you understand the purpose, and understanding the purpose is knowing that should you let your boundaries down for someone else, the abuse is going to be even more worse than before, because now this person understands that, oh my goodness, they're not willing to see this through. So that means I can do whatever I want. I can show up however I want. And baby, you deserve better. All right, right? So there's also a balance of emotional labor. Both partners are able to give and receive support. It's not just a one-way street. I'm just dumping. I call those people emotional vampires. Oh my gosh. You just withdrawing and withdrawing and withdrawing and withdrawing, and you're never depositing. Oh, it's so draining. I mean, I don't care how much of an emotionally compassionate, empathetic individual that you are. There's some point where you just need that consistency of someone else just pouring into you, and it's not transactional, it's real, it's beautiful, right? So ensure that you don't have those emotional vampires around you. And if you do, set some firm boundaries, because your worth and your value is significant, okay? And of course, being able to have that balance in financial decision making, even in incomes, if the income differ or different, both should be able to have some form of influence in choices, and where it involves respect, right? And of course, therapy, send someone to be able to talk to that if there's concern there. But there have to be both individual willing to do the work, whether it's going to therapy, whether it's having those tough conversation, whether it's sitting down and listening to the other person's needs and wants, and vice versa. The work must be done. It's not just, oh, I want the good times in the relationship, but when it's hard, I'm running from it. Then you ain't ready for no relationship, baby. You ready to just keep running. I heard this quote that says, if someone is running, tell them to tie their shoes and keep running, because baby, I ain't no longer involved. I'm no longer available since you've been running. So when does power imbalance becomes abusive? Things that we have to be aware of and also look out for, because it does help with setting boundaries. It does help with also ensuring that you are in a safe space, right? So if the power imbalance includes intimidation, if the power imbalance includes isolation, if the power imbalance includes threats or coercive controlling, and if that happens, this is a form of emotional and psychological abuse, and help is available. The domestic hotline. You can talk to therapists. Privately. Those spaces are confidential unless you express that you want to hurt someone or somebody else. But those spaces are confidential and should be confidential. But help is available, and you don't have to navigate the space on your own. You just have to be able to find someone that you trust and that is a safe space, and it's not going to be judgmental at all. Because when you're going through stuff, you don't want nobody to tell you da, 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 da. You just want support, okay? And if you feel like that is not the space, baby, let it go and work on yourself and figuring out how to build that healthy space, okay? So let's talk a little bit about power imbalance in families, because that can also happen. I talked about it not just in relationship and romantic relationships. Power imbalance can also happen in the workplace. It can happen in family relationship. It can happen in friendships as well, right? So power imbalance in family relationship often occur when there's this dominance. It's a lot of similarities with romantic relationship, but slightly different, right? Because it's romance versus family. So there's this sense of control, this sense of dictating how someone feel, what their thoughts are, what their behaviors, or how their decision making should be, and how they should show up without mutual respect or even consent, right? So, what are the type of common imbalances in family relationships? So, there's this parent to child, um, over controlling dynamic beyond healthy relationship, right? There's this excessive rules or lack of autonomy or emotional manipulation that may involve. There's also, a parent guilt tripping a child, an adult child, for not obeying or staying close or not doing what, the parents may assume the child should be doing or showing up as in that space. There's this sibling, where the siblings are often, this hierarchical space in the relationship. So older siblings or more dominant siblings tend to control or bully other siblings, right? So examples may be where one sibling's always being favored or taking credit while others are silenced or blamed, right? So those things can tends to happen, and it doesn't not only impact the family as a whole, it can impact that individual that is being singled out, right? Whew, yes, 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 it can. Hmm. Yeah, I'm telling you, I'm getting perfected in this drink. No, I'm not. All right, so there's just also enmeshment of family, right? This emotional lack of boundaries, a blur in boundaries, where one person or often a parent tries to live through another. An example would be where a mother or father treats her child as a best friend or an emotional partner because of what that person is able to provide for them. And when that resources or thing is no longer available, there's different way of that parents showing up in that child's life that impact that child's emotional being and even self-esteem. And this is not a positive impact. It often leads to negative impact as a result. So scapegoating, right? One member is blamed for everything wrong in the family. You're always causing problems in the family, or being singled out during every conflict. Because you're not fitting into the status quo of what they want you to fit into. So therefore, you're this black sheep of, the family environment as a result. There's also this cultural or gender-based authority, traditional that or traditions that favor, like I mentioned earlier, gender, age, or even role. The oldest son as the family leader, or the oldest daughter as the family leader, at the expenses of other siblings who are really trying individually to, contribute or find their own way. And those things are often being dismissed and overlooked. There's financial control. One member controls money, leading to dependency, or one members assume, or several members assume that one person should be contributing in certain way or show up in certain way. And when it's not happening, there's this resentment that comes out of that space because we're a bloodline. You need to show up for me. All these type of mentality, family elder withholding their financial supports to, enforce obedience, even though it is probably necessary to be able to show up in that space for that person. So, the consequences in this dynamic, romantic and family relationship can also, like I said, be similar. There's this low self-esteem, anxiety that can lead to depression, this difficulty with setting boundaries in adult life. I've spoken to adult parents, through my work, who are still struggling how to show up as adults in their own voices to their parents because of this lack of boundary, because of this inconsistency. And I've also spoken to parents who are in their older age and are having difficulties to show up for their in their children's life with healthy boundaries because there's this fear of all these things. They assume that they haven't showed up for their child, so therefore they allow their boundaries to be violated because they feel like they need to keep showing up for this child who is an adult and making decisions on their own but continue to torture this parent for the past. So there's so many different things. There's this codependency or people pleasing behavior, showing up for validation, showing up because you want people to see you in the capacity that you see yourself or the capacity that you think they should see you, but really they're not putting in the work to do so. Because let me tell you something. If someone wants to see you however they want to see you, that's how they're going to see you. No matter how much work you put into it. If someone wants to see you as your authentic self, they will see you as your authentic self. If someone wants to see you as less than they are, even though that may not be the truth or fact or nothing associated to that, no matter how much work you put in, that's how they want to show up and see you. So the best love is self love, because when you understand who you are, when you understand what your needs and your values are, you are able to match the energy of those around you. And when those around you who aren't supposed to be around you and matching that energy, baby, you will know. And you will easily remove yourself from that space because it's not worthy. Okay. So, how to balance or rebalance power in family is by setting healthy boundaries and sticking to them. Consistency is important, especially as an adult. Define what you will and you will not accept. And that is okay, baby, if you have to stand on it on your own, because you're telling people that this is how I see myself. And the right people who see you as that, God. God will bring them around you. And sometimes that is the most hardest thing to do, especially when it comes to people of your heart, right? People that you love, is being able to let go and release control and allowing you to be able to see yourself as God sees you, so that you don't continue to show up in spaces for humans that don't even see you, that don't even see you or create the space to see you. So, using assertive communication, being clear about what your needs and wants are in those relationships, and also being open to listen to what that other person needs and wants are in the relationship too, right? As long as it's healthy, right? And it's not toxic, being able to stay calm, firm, and expressing your needs and so forth. And, seeking outside support if that's what you and the family member or families are willing to do. Therapy can provide a tool for tools to be able to, reevaluate those different spaces, to be able to provide some form of validations and some form of, bring a highlight to anything that is toxic or anything that is, dealing with control that is unhealthy. But like I always say, we all have to be willing to put in the work to make it happen, not just one person. Reconstructing roles if possible, right? Encouraging more, involvement in relationships, more decision voices in decision makings in the relationship, where it's not just one person just making those decisions, and also limit or redefine contact if necessary. I believe in protecting my peace. I truly do. I say this all the time. The good Lord loves him some Dorinda. And he treats Dorinda very well. So there's no need for me to subject myself to any human beings to treat me opposites than what the good Lord treats me as. Okay? So if Dorinda needs to step away, guess what? Dorinda will step away. So in extreme circumstances, creating distance, creating boundaries helps. And even sometimes it may be temporary, right? It doesn't have to be permanent. Sometimes it may be permanent if needed, but this may be temporary to be able to, protect your well-being and your sanity so that you do not become insane in those spaces. So there is, in family imbalance or power imbalance in family, a lot of the abuse that or causes of abuse can lead to verbal, degradation or degradation. Ooh, that word a little long. But, it can also lead to physical violence. It can also lead to gaslighting, where someone telling you you're the problem and they're projecting it on you instead of really doing the internal work to do it themselves. There's also this neglect or trying to force you to believe, like I mentioned earlier, that how you're showing up is authentic and what they're saying is always the truth, and nothing you have to say is the truth. Everything you said is wrong. There's something wrong there. You have to wonder why that consistently happened, right? So, what are healthy balance in romantic and family relationships? I mentioned some of the things earlier, right? It's mutual respect, valuing each other's opinion, time, and boundaries, even during disagreements. Just because I say no to you, it doesn't mean you have to have a tantrum right after that, through your behavior. Because even if you don't say anything, baby, your behavior shows that there's no respect here, right? So just being able to have open communication, talking honestly about your feelings and your needs and your concerns without fear or judgment. That's really important. Being able to share power in that space. Look, I believe that in a relationship, we are powerful and individually and collectively. So being able to share your power together as a partner, making decisions together, even if the roles are different, right? One person may cook one day, one person may handle the bill one day, but it doesn't mean that it always have to be that way. How can we bind together to ensure that the weight is lifted off on each person's plate, and we can come together collectively and work and from that space? And even if the weight is heavy, there's still a way of finding that balance. Independence, being able to respect independence and also being together, that's going to be significant. Each person being able to identify, maintain their own identity while growing together as a couple. Just because you're married, just because you're in a relationship, it doesn't mean that you get to lose who you are to just be one. And I think that is a challenge, because when you do lose yourself in that sense, let's say the relationship doesn't work out. Now you're subjected to that person's friends, you're subjected to that person's, world. And you have to work in being able to identify your own world. Because one thing I'm realizing, when those tough time hits, baby, people pick sides. And when people pick sides, they pick sides and they stay on sides that a lot of times it's not healthy. But you have to understand your worth even in that space and know who you are and stand firm, right? Because that that's important. There's also equal emotional labor, both in giving support, empathy, and effort in the relationship, not just one person carrying the relationship in different aspects, and this one person just showing up, being put on the pedestal and showing up, but really not doing nothing behind the scene. So that's really important. So healthy relationship dynamics is you feel heard, you feel seen, you feel supported, you see the effort not just in yourself but also what the other person is bringing to the table. You don't feel heavy. You can disagree respectfully and still have that respect for one another. You both can apologize and take accountability and responsibility for the things around you. There are boundaries and they're firm and consistent, but there's also respect. And there's no negotiation, or trying to negotiate those boundaries down just so you can meet that one person's expectation, because they refuse to make the necessary changes themselves, right? There's space for personal growth, not control. A lot of times people would tell you, oh, you've changed. Change is beautiful. What's wrong with changing? If it's healthy, why won't you meet me where I am? So that's a red flag, right? So there's space for growth when someone is not willing to allow you to grow in the capacity that you're supposed to, because there's this intent in men to stay in control. Because when you're growing, sometimes it means that that person may lose certain aspect of control in your life, but it can still be healthy if there's balance. It can. So healthy elements in, family relationships, mutual respect, two-way support, not just one way. You're doing all of this versus I'm just showing up and that expectation is set. No, there's autonomy, but there's also connection, and there's healthy conflict resolutions, right? Being able to address issues collectively, and not that doesn't involve manipulation, collectively, and working towards that goal. Each person can express their views without fear. There's love. I mean, love isn't conditional. You don't have to do this for me, so me to show up and love you as a family member. You don't have to show up how I want you to show up. You can be who you are and I can still love you. There's no transactional, there's no condition in that space. And there are room for mistakes, right? Room for mistakes because we're human. And we can also take that as a form of being able to see that person in a graceful way, and not shaming or making that person feel, neglected in any way. So, how to maintain balance overall in romantic relationship, we have to do regular check-ins. Are you still feeling balanced? Like I often ask my couples therapy, couples in therapy, one, what made you two fell in love? Let's go back to that space where you were seeing each other and no mistakes were being acknowledged or focused on. What made the two of you fell in love? And do you guys do a regular check-in where, how has your needs and wants changed? Because we're human. You can't be married to someone 20, 30 years and expect that person to stay the same forever. That's unrealistic expectation, right? So checking in regularly. Are you feeling balanced? Reevaluating roles when life changes. How do I need to show up for you now that there's children involved? How do I need to show up now there, maybe there's a career shift, right? Where this one person may have more responsibility and you can show up differently for them, where it doesn't become an envy situation, but it become a supportive space. How to normalize, therapy if that's needed to prevent any escalation of those issues in the romantic relationship. And family is being able to reclaim your adult autonomy without, your parents, or with parents, right? With parents, but where it's appreciated and it's not looked as defiant, is not looked as you just wanting to be by yourself or whatever the case is. Being able to appreciate your concerns, to be able to decide what is best for you without even having those internal conflicts that when you feel like you need to negotiate your own needs and wants with people who really are not seeing you, only what access they have to you and what you can produce in that space for them. So renegotiating roles in adulthood, setting clear and kind boundaries. Clear and kind. Mine are clear and very silence because you will feel it. If you're in a imbalanced relationship, the things that you can do is, of course, you have to recognize the pattern. The work has to start in your space. You have to recognize the pattern. You have to ask yourself, who usually makes the decision? Do I feel free to express myself without fear? Am I consistently sacrificing, apologizing, or seeking approval? Because those are signs that we need to pay attention to. Those are red flags. I always say there are green flags in relationships and there are red flags in relationships. And I know a lot of time we tend to overlook those red flags, assuming that the person is going to change out of love and all of those things. But baby, when you first see it, you need to address it. Because when we keep living it, it lingers and it adds on. And also, that individual becomes comfortable in showing up in that manner, in that capacity, which leads to you having to struggle internally in that space, right? So, do I feel free to express myself without fear? Am I consistently sacrificing, apologizing, or seeking approval? Awareness, awareness is the first and most powerful step in making any change for yourself. Name it to yourself first. Use clear language to describe what's happening to you. Oh my goodness, this person is gaslighting me. Oh my goodness, this person is manipulating me. Name it. Don't feel ashamed, because if you can name it, when someone else throw it at you, baby, it bounces off. It bounces off. Okay. So use clear language to describe what's happening. I often feel silence when I speak up. I've been giving up my boundaries to keep the peace. They control the money, the time, the emotion in ways that feel unfair. Putting it into words can help you stop gaslighting yourself. Not only allowing someone else to gaslighting you, but also not creating that space to gaslight yourself, and providing clarity, um, and leading that can lead to change and positive change. Setting boundaries, decide what you will and will not accept. That's huge. I know sometimes when you're setting boundaries, it can be the most difficult things, because sometimes it may lead you to isolation, right? It may lead you to a space where it's just you trying to understand and nobody's around you, because all of these vampires are gone, right? But it's okay, because it is in that isolation and in that space where you, oh my goodness, you self discover who you truly are, and you're able to stand firm on those boundaries, because you understand what you will and will not accept, even if it feels uncomfortable at first. You can often say, I'm not okay with you making financial decision without me. I need to be heard when I express how I feel. I won't keep apologizing for my needs. And I think that's something that I had to realize as a woman, as a child, as a human being, is that I had to stop making apologies. I had to start putting people's needs over my own needs, when these were individuals in my life, I have one in my life, that were not, prioritizing my needs. In the beginning, I assumed it was prioritizing my needs. And then I understood that, oh no, this is not how people who loves me should be showing up for me. So are you in that space as well, where you feel like, you're not getting as much as you're pouring into these spaces? Try to communicate the imbalance in the relationship. If it's not if it's not abusive, you can talk about it in a calmly manner using an I statement. And if it is abusive and dangerous, seek outside support. There are a lot of spaces that are safe. The domestic abuse hotline. There's also, like I said, different therapeutic spaces in your community that will help you, your friends, people that, have shown up for you consistently, and that they will as well. You know, I feel overlooked, when decisions are made without my input. Being able to allow your partner that space to also show up for you, to also respect you and listen to you, if that's also what they want to do. Observe the response. I always say a lack of response is still a response. If you bring some issues to your partner or your family and they are not willing to change or do anything about it, sometimes they just talk about it. Like, yeah, I'm gonna do. They're just talking about it. There's no actions or change. That's a response. And you have to pay attention to that, not just what they're telling you, because people will manipulate you and tell you what you want to hear, because that's what they've always done. They've always known how to throw a little something to you to keep doing what what they want to do, or for them to keep having access, right? So you have to be careful and pay attention to that chatter, not just the chat. Baby, are they putting in the work? Are they putting in the action? Are they stepping up like they say they would? And if it's not, that's a response, right? Are they being dismissive of your concerns? Are they flipping and blaming you for things that they should be responsible for? Are they projecting how they feel internally on you so you can seem like you're the problem so that they don't take accountability for what they need to work on to heal? Because things that I've learned as well is that some people are not willing to put in the work to heal. They don't want to heal because they love that toxicity. They love that space. And sometimes you have to allow people who refuses to heal to stay in that space so you can protect your mental peace, baby, because it's worth it. Okay. So make you feel guilty for speaking up, or do they listen, reflect, and express the willingness to change? This will tell you if there's an imbalance, if there's flexibility, or if it's even fundamental for you to keep going in that space. And get support. Talk to someone safe, not just anybody. I know it's hard, but a lot of these spaces are not safe, right? Here at the Human Narratives, we said, "Come to the human narratives." We try to protect and provide as much safe space as we can, not just here, but also even in my private practice. I love the type of leader I am. I love the type of therapist I am is because I prioritize people's safety because I would want someone to do the same for me. So being able to get the support that you need, even if it's not with a therapist, talking to a good friend, a good family member, or even someone that you can connect with, right? A support group. So if you're unsure whether where to begin, emotionally, start talking to yourself, start asking those questions. Do I deserve how I'm feeling in this space? And if your internal self is telling you you don't, you get that discernment, that's a sign. Prepare to reclaim your power. If the imbalance continues and you're losing your sense of self, it's important and it is time to restructure the relationship or even restructure yourself, emotionally. Set firm boundaries with consequences. It's okay to set boundaries with consequences in family relationships, right? um, or in other cases, walk away if needed to protect your mental health and your mental peace. And if the abuse or emotion, if it's abuse, of course, and it's harmful, seek help. Start, having some sense of control over certain things, like preparing things that you need to do so that you can get out of that space. If this space is making you feel worthless or afraid, if you feel like you're isolating, if you feel threatened, all of these things, the domestic hotline, there's a therapist, there's also shelters and other advocacy group. Remember, your safety matters more than keeping the peace. I'm going to say that again. Your safety matters more than keeping the peace. I've always said that my mental health matters more than any relationships. My mental health matters more than any relationship. And when I get to a point where I feel like I'm losing that, baby, I'd rather lose you. That's fact. Okay. So setting boundaries is important in relationships and family and romantic relationships as well, because those are important. Okay. The importance of protecting your peace is that you own your self safety. No explanation to nobody else. People will always have opinions about how things should be or how things should not be. That's not your burden to carry. That's their perspective. Stick to what is important to you, because peace is power. When you protect your peace, you think more clearly, you love more deeply. Ooh, I love that. You love more deeply. You heal more fully. Oh, I love that too. And you see better boundaries and you're able to reclaim control over your own life. And it doesn't lead to no drama in that environment, in that space, especially if you're not the type of person, right? And protecting your peace is self-respect. It's telling that person that I'm not allowing you to show up in my space anyhow you choose to. Nah, baby, you used to do it because I compromised. But it's over. We're not doing that no more. Walking away from manipulation, staying, saying no without guilt, trusting your own intuition, resting with others, without having to always change who you are. The right people don't need